The time has come for scary things like vampires, ghosts, and vampire wings, like horrible movies all drippy and drooly, and horrible hosts like me, Svengoolie. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Toony Tears Svengoolie. Bring the fun of Saturday morning cartoons to your horror collection with these adorable little creeps. Pick your favorites or collect them all and make every day Toony terror time. For this particular review, I decided to pack up shop and move locations. So instead of being in the normal studio, we're instead sitting inside the Screaming Yellow Theater as we have a closer look at the brand new Svengoolie. Of course, before we get a closer look, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Toony Terror Svengoolie that we could have a look at this review. The figure, by the way, is available, as well as all the other Toony Terrors we've been looking at lately here on this channel, whether you go and decide to find these in the wild, like in your brick and mortar stores like Target's, or you can also go the route of ordering these online. Either way, though, the figure with the hat included, you're looking at Svengoolie standing about 5.5 inches in height, or he's going to be about 14 centimeters tall. I'm sure I can't be the only one that's noticed with this trend of Toony Terror figures that they all sort of center around horror hosts. Specifically, of course, we just recently had a look at Elvira. I just knocked over her dog. Let's just fix that up. We looked at Elvira, of course, on her couch. And then we just recently, in fact, looked at Vampira, two also horror hosts of small-time TV stations. Although in there as well, we also looked at Captain Spaulding. Not that I'm aware if he actually has himself his own TV station. He might very well. I don't know if those would be shows I necessarily would want to watch. But a really good, interesting bunch of characters this time around from NECA. For those maybe not familiar with Svengoolie, he was actually first on Screaming Yellow Theater. That's why I actually said at the beginning of this review, from 1970 to 1973. Then from that, there was a Son of Svengoolie series, what ran from 1979 to 1986. Again, I didn't want to say small-time TV stations, but maybe not everyone across the globe would have been familiar with some of these characters. So they kind of get a chance to get a spotlight here with the Toony Terror releases. Speaking of spotlighting things, one thing I did also want to bring in, I haven't really done this with the other Toony Terrors yet, is that all of the characters also come included with these cutout cardboard backdrops. Svengoolie, for example, includes a little casket there. It does have the front of the face there, the little skeleton face of Svengoolie. Honestly, though, I just never really cut these out just because, again, like, if you look at the figures like this, let's bring back in Vampire here for comparisons. See how much space the two of them occupy on their own. And then we bring in the backdrop for Svengoolie. You can kind of see, yeah, if you really wanted to have, say, the backdrop specific to characters, then you'd have to allot for space in between them, just to, of course, to accommodate this big-sized cardboard piece. Again, I love the idea that they included it. I just never really display it with my own personal collection. Let's move Vampire out of the way. He does have one accessory, although the accessory that's with Svengoolie is his rubber chicken, and it's permanently attached to his hand, which I suppose is probably a one good thing, instead of something I'm just going to lose anyways. And if the hand didn't already have the chicken, for example, it would only just be a gripping hand. I'd be saying to myself, well, if you really have to have a gripping hand, you might as well just have put the rubber chicken in there. And NECA probably thought the same thing. They just decided to do that instead. So the rubber chicken isn't something that can be removed. Again, it doesn't bother me at all, because when I think of Svengoolie, I think of the rubber chicken. He also has the rubber chicken there also as his necklace there as well. A great head sculpt, though, for Svengoolie, whether you were one that grew up with this series or not. A really nice job from NECA. A slightly fuller face. You can see they've got some panel lining that they've added to the sides of the cheeks, the nose, and, of course, the very notable raccoon shadowing that he has always around his eyes. A little chin beard also there as well. Svengoolie also has a hat, but generally is the case when we look at these Toony Terrors, none of things like hats are ever really removable, so you can't really take it off of Svengoolie's head. Even if you did, I would imagine the head underneath would be basically just like a little peg, and that wouldn't look good for anybody. On the other hand, literally on the other hand, the figure has sort of a gestured hand. Now, he does have articulation in his shoulders, goes with the territory normally of these Toony Terrors, very limited on articulation. I mean, I guess I could run through it now. Obviously, I just want to quickly show you guys what the figure, though, will look like. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. The brighter colors of the red, of course, for his shirt. I already mentioned, of course, he's got the little rubber chicken there for his necklace. He's got a little detailing there also on the side of his jacket. But again, when it comes to really the articulation on these figures, they're quite limited. The whole idea really in mind is that they're more stylized characters, looking as if, I always say this, that they could be in an episode of Scooby-Doo. I could really imagine Svengoolie really not even changing his character at all. I could really see him as being a character that would maybe appear as a television station host. And Scooby-Doo and the gang, of course, there's probably some hauntings at that particular station. You have to go investigate, and along the ways, they also hang out with Svengoolie in the process. But like I said, though, for the articulation on Svengoolie, very limited articulation. Unfortunately, by the nature of his hair just being as long as it is, it really doesn't allot for much space, really, when it comes to rotating his head. I find funny enough that I can actually rotate it better this way, but when I try to turn it this way, there definitely seems to be something holding it up. The head does look down only by just a little bit. I know if you had blinked, you would have already missed it. But the head does look down. I mean, that's as far down as it actually goes. It does look up, and I guess you could rock it back and forth, but only just by a little bit. The figure also has articulation in his shoulders. Both the hand, the expression hand, does also have a swivel, so I guess technically there's a point of articulation there as well. This arm does rotate, although it's really tight on this figure. I had loosened this up with the idea in mind that when I was ready to hit record, it was going to be loose. But like all of a sudden it seized itself back up again. I guess that all happens when we all get old. I mean, my own shoulders seize up from time to time, and I have to kind of stretch them. Maybe the same thing also for Svengoolie here. It was really tight. I loosened it, thinking it was ready to go, and we're ready to start the record on this. And sure enough, the shoulders got tight again. Yeah, there definitely seems to be a little more tightness on this side. And the figure, of course, rotates this side as well, the hand that's actually holding the rubber chicken. No articulation at all for the waist. I mean, doesn't really necessarily need it anyways. He's basically posed the way I feel like Svengoolie would have been posed anyways. I don't necessarily miss the idea that they just omitted the articulation here for the waist, because honestly, I mean, even if he could rotate the waist, what would you really be doing with it? You'd only be twisting his waist, say, that way, so he's, looking this way. Or if you twisted it, obviously, it'd be facing the opposite way. I mean, he has no articulation either for his feet. The way at least they wide stance the feet, even though he does have peg holes. Well, he has, I don't want to say peg holes plural. He has peg holes single. He has only one on the heel on this side. Technically, you could use a display stand from NECA. You could just plug it onto the back of this or on the bottom of this. But honestly, the way they've wide stanced the figure, Svengoolie doesn't have any problems at all to stand. Whether you have his arms up, for example, or if you have his arms down, the figure stands perfectly fine. And once again, bringing back in some horror hosts. I'll put them in on both sides. I got a rolling skull off to the side here that came included with Vampire. Still don't know really why that head. I know this honestly is a review of Svengoolie. I still don't know why there's that peg on the bottom of the skull. I'm going to find out one day. But again, like nice little hosts. We don't have yet a Tales from the Crypt Creeper. I would love to get a Tales from the Crypt Keeper. That would be also a nice horror host. I'm a little more familiar, I think, with the Tales from the Crypt Keeper than maybe necessarily Vampira and Svengoolie. I'm aware of them, and I never really grew up with the series, just dating by the fact that the original Screaming Yellow Theater debuted 1970 to 1973. That's not to date myself. That's 5 years before I was born. If you grew up with Svengoolie, let me know down below in the comment section. Actually, even better, a good question to ask you guys. Maybe if you aren't familiar with any of the characters here on the front, whether it be Vampira, or Svengoolie, let me know down below in the comments section if you also had a TV series that was hosted by somebody. It didn't have to necessarily be horror. I know here in Canada we have Commander Tom. Commander Tom was not hosting horror series. But did you ever have a TV station host, horror or otherwise, that you grew up watching? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, though, again, really nice looking Svengoolie. I really liked the way that this guy turned out. I'm not disappointed at all the fact that the chicken isn't removable. I don't think it really needed to be anyways. Good job once again by the folks over at NECA Toys. I'd hate to really think that this particular wave of Toony tears will just end up being peg warmers because collectors may not identify right away who these characters were. Instead of a Ghostface, for example, or Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, not all collectors, especially their age, that's the one thing that may determine whether these get picked up or not, is the age of the collector. Younger kids may not identify right away who Svengoolie is, may not know who Vampira is. I like to hopefully think that they're going to at least know who Elvira is. But yeah, unfortunately, by going the direction that NECA did with this particular wave, may result in these figures maybe not selling as well as the earlier Toony tears with more recognizable characters. The appeal of these is not necessarily the fact that you grew up with the series. You may not be as familiar with Svengoolie, you may not again be as familiar with Vampira, but at least they are interesting enough looking characters. The idea that this guy with a blacked out kind of eye-aired face, and he's also carrying around a rubber chicken, even if you don't even know who the character is, isn't that just a fun enough figure to have on the shelf along with the rest of your Toony terrors? Let me know down below in the comments section if you've picked up, again, the Svengoolie or any of the other ones we've looked at lately here on this channel. A big thank you once again to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Svengoolie that we could have a look at in this review. If you guys also, by the way, did want to see any of the other reviews that I've done for Toony Terrors, I think we're covered off pretty much all the territory of Toony Terrors. Popping up also at the very end of this video will be a playlist. Feel free to, again, check that out if you have a little bit of time on your hands. Backtracking, though, just a little bit. I did also want to say, too, if you guys as always, enjoy these videos, throw it a like. It always certainly helps this channel to grow. And also, as well, if you guys want to stick around for more videos and you haven't had yet the chance to do this, always make sure you're hitting that subscribe button down below. And equally important, of course, that you're turning on the bell notification so that you're telling YouTube you always want to get those reminders every single time the person behind the camera, that's me, is posting new content. We are, by the way, I don't even have to look at my station director. No, what? No. Producer Tony, by the way, is just taking a leave of absence. So right now I've got myself Director Henry. Henry's right now just standing over the side. He seems to be doing a pretty good job. I don't want to say that I don't necessarily need Producer Tony anymore, but at the way that Henry's been working hard lately, and not to mention stocking out basically all the snacks we've been eating as of late, I might just end up keeping Henry around and, Producer Tony. Stay tuned for that. But definitely there's going to be a lot more videos coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.